Hey guys, Casual Crono here. I've had a few requests on my channel and recently a discussion on Reddit about Stellar Awakening characters and is it worth it. Some people want like a ranking list, things like that. I personally feel a ranking list, like saying this person, is best, this person is weakest, etc. It's open to interpretation, and it's also open to, do you have a good supporting cast? So Oboro, for example, can be amazing if you have the right Thunder characters. If you don't have any Thunder characters, there's really no reason to Stellar Awaken Oboro. It's really more of a judgment call, so my purpose for this video, I'm trying something a little different. I am going to talk about these 5 characters. I'm going to showcase, explain what their stellar skills are and what other benefits their stellar skill tree might have. Then I'm going to show them in a fight that kind of makes use of that stellar skill. And that way it's kind of up to you to look at these characters and go, oh, if that character can do this, that would work really well with, my 3 or 4 or 5 other characters. They'd be a good complement. So you can decide for yourself if it's worth it to blow the very precious, rare all-cosmos star charts on them to Stellar Awaken them, or if they're perfectly functional at level 80, which many of them are. I'm starting with these 5 because, Suzette aside, the other 4 require you to spend all-cosmos star charts. Other characters that I have, like Yuan and so forth, if I click here, these are all of the Stellar Awakened characters I have at the moment. But a lot of them are free characters. You can earn their star charts through Astral Archives, or you can go to Nopal's Emporium and buy what you need. So there's only a few, I think 4 really, Alma, Oboro, Thillelillie, and Xianhua, that I had to use star charts or I had to pull them on their Stellar Awakening banners. I threw in Suzette because she was the first character I did. I just started doing characters, and I'm like, oh yeah, you can buy her stuff from Nopals. So anyway, I'm going to start with these 5. If y'all like this video, feel free to say so below, and I can certainly make another video. Like I could do one that focuses on the free characters, Aldo, Fine, Riz, Cyrus, Helena, Galliard, Particio. I could do one that involves like just older characters that have Nopal Emporium purchases, like Annabelle and Melissa and Yuan. So, I can arrange this however I want. So, give me some feedback. Let me know what you like about this, if you want me to do anything different. Without further ado, we're just going to go in alphabetical order. If there's one character in particular that you want to look at, feel free to skip ahead to that character. And in the comments section, or in the description below, I should have them set up so you can jump straight to, Alma or Suzette or Xianhua or whoever. So, here we go. Alma AS has a stellar skill called Kaleidoscope. Normally, it grants link to a single party member for 5 turns, gives them barrier piercing for 3 moves, restores all statuses, removes all debuffs from that particular ally. And if you use it during another force, it's the ally to the user's right by default. Normally you wouldn't really use it in another force unless you're stellar bursting. Okay, the link effect, when the ally attacks, the crystal, basically you get an extra attack that's crystal type. However, if the linked ally is, like a wind or a water user, then they get an extra wind attack or an extra water attack, etc. So to chew through barriers, it's an extra attack that does damage to a barrier, so that part's nice. If you use it in a stellar burst, all party members gain this link, and all party members get 3 moves of barrier piercing. It also restores everyone's health, mana, and revives anyone that's been knocked out. And to my knowledge, this and Alma AS's forms are the only 2 forms in the game as of July 2024 that can revive knocked out allies. So if you have an issue with people getting knocked out all the time, Kaleidoscope is great. Ideally, you don't want people knocked out to begin with. Her other stellar abilities: the more crystal allies there are in the front line, the more shadow power increases. If she hits a weak point, shadow power increases. And when she activates the stellar burst and shadow is greater, then type resistance of all enemies drops 40% until the end of the turn. So let's see this in action. We are going to fight the mysterious Chaos Ogre Hard, who has barriers. So you haven't fought him at the start of the fight. He has a curse that drops everyone's health, which is conveniently after they get healed. And he has a 35 stack barrier right there. So turn 1, we're going to cast Promised Land so that Thillelillie has an extra hit. We'll go ahead and do Lunatic. We will do increase physical resistance, and we will get a rage going with Alma.
Absolutely splendid.
Now Alma has an ability that basically keeps her alive the first couple of turns. It's Alchemaic High, and it also provides this counterattack. None of this is related to her stellar skill. This is just normal Alma AS functioning. So you don't need her SA to be doing what you're seeing right now. And it's wonderful for keeping the team alive and keeping their mana up. And for chewing through barriers. We just went through, we went from 35 to 22 barriers in one turn. She also redirects all damage to herself. You saw that the rest of her team is quite healthy, and she's almost dead. But she's unkillable because of that Alchemaic High, so that doesn't really matter. So again, that's not part of her SA, that's just part of Alma being Alma. So here on turn 2, we're going to blow the AF gauge. We're going to cast Photon Messiah. We're going to cast Hornet Hail. Actually, we'll probably do one Glint Gale and then Hornet Hail. We did Healing Lore, so we'll just do Hakam Chets and Luster Glare. So we're going to do 1, 2, 1, 1. So 1, 2, 1, 1. We're trying to build up the burst bar, and we're trying to get the boss down. So the boss is now down to its HP stopper. However, what it's going to do is put up a barrier. And we have to kill this boss and chew through that barrier, or gain barrier piercing. And that's where Alma's stellar skill is going to come into play. You're going to go ahead, burst, and use Kaleidoscope. That will give everyone Link and everyone 3 moves of barrier piercing. And we'll go ahead and start attacking. We don't want to use her stellar, so we'll just Glint Gale again.
Irregular performance increase detected.
So now everyone has barrier piercing. Photon, Hornet, Hakam Chets, and Luster Glare. And thanks to the barrier piercing, it didn't matter how many stacks were left, we were able to defeat the boss. So as you can see, Kaleidoscope definitely has its uses. So as you saw, Kaleidoscope gave everyone barrier piercing for 3 moves, and if there had been a barrier to chew through, even if it wasn't barrier piercing, the extra link would have helped do more damage to the barrier. So if anyone had been knocked out, it would have revived them as well. Now, that said, Alma's stellar board, is it necessary? Kaleidoscope is nice, but a lot of characters naturally barrier pierce anyway. You have Sesta, Manalka, other people's SA skills like the Thillelillies. So granting someone barrier piercing is nice to have. Is it vital? Not really. If anything, leveling her to 100 since she's a tank and giving her extra endurance and spirit and HP is possibly more valuable than the stellar skill. In addition, increasing the shadow power for the stellar burst abilities is helpful, not necessarily for Alma, but if she's in a team with other characters that can stellar burst, it speeds it up for them. So Alma's really making Thillelillie or Melissa a little more powerful. So you do gain some extra health nodes, you gain some mana nodes, you of course gain your stats and everything, and as you level to 100, your hit points and, power, endurance, spirit, all that stuff slowly increases a little bit. As a tank, when she's not in her alchemaic high, you want her hit points to be pretty high so she can survive until the next alchemaic high. But the bottom line, is her stellar board vital? Is her stellar skill important? It's nice to have. It's not vital for her functioning. She can do all the basics. She can be indestructible for a few turns. She can counterattack and heal without her stellar board. So if you have Alma AS, it's not really necessary to stellar awaken her, in my opinion. Extra stats are nice, extra abilities are nice, not absolutely required for her to function, my opinion. So that's Alma AS. Oboro Stellar Awakened is kind of an interesting character. His stellar skill is Rising Beat. It activates his strongest learned skill at double extra large strength. When spark is over 50, it consumes and raises his Raging mode. And in Stellar Burst, he gains 3 moves of Barrier Pierce and attacks again. And most of his unique skills attack like 3 times. So he gains Barrier Pierce and then Barrier Pierces immediately in a Stellar Burst. Other stellar skills: when another force is over, he, for the next turn, makes the enemy weak to thunder, lasts for 1 turn. If he has 2 allies in the front line, light power is stored up quicker. And when he activates a stellar burst, as long as light power is greater, it extends another zone by 3 turns. So his stellar awakening does a couple of things. It keeps an awakened thunder zone going through that path, and it can allow him to barrier pierce immediately. The whole spark stacking thing is actually not part of his stellar board. That's just part of his natural abilities. So basically at the turn start in the front line, he stacks 10 spark on all enemies, and then his various attacks put on sparks as well. And if you don't have Rising Beat, if he's not Stellar Awakened, basically once you hit 50 stacks, the very next turn, he ups his Raging mode. And Raging mode does a few things, but in short, Raging mode gives him speed, gives him link, and then higher modes give him power, intelligence, and speed, and improve his link damage, and ultimately also inflict 3 stacks of Elemental Break Thunder. So it's kind of like he's leveling up by consuming all those sparks. But the sparks, the Raging mode and everything, that's not part of his stellar ability. His stellar ability only is barrier piercing and continuing another, usually the Thunder Zone awakened, and then exposing thunder on all enemies. And of course the extra stats and HP and MP and everything that comes with going from level 80 to 100. So let's showcase this on the Mysterious Chaos Ogre Hard. Thunder teams are designed to hit a lot, hit often, and hit hard. And then once this AF gauge is gone, it's usually very, very quick to restore. That's just the general line of thinking for zones. So you can see the boss has 10 stacks of spark, and it gains more stacks based on how many thunder hits happen. So we're going to blow the AF gauge right away. We're going to do 2 for pain, 3, Actually, you know what? We don't really need the regen for this particular fight. And the zone's already awakened, so... yeah. Alright, so we'll do 2 for pain, 2 to improve power, 3 to get some slash resistance, and then 3 to reduce power, inflict rage. So we'll do 2, 2, 3, 3, and then they'll start spamming 1s. He'll start spamming, oh, he'll hit 2 once for thunder type attack, and she will buff the team, and then everyone will spam 1s. You will notice, whereas other fights, the gauge will go slowly down, because this is a thunder team, the gauge is going to keep going for a while, and we should get a pretty high combo rating. The 35 stacks of the shield are going to go pretty quick as well. So 2, 2, 3, 3, then 1, 1, 2, 2, and then all 1s. 2, 2, 3, 3. Alright, start spamming. The barrier is about to go away. We just hit a 50 stack and went to Raging mode level 1. We hit an HP stopper, which is why the boss is not dying. Combo rate is in the 700s already. And we have 41 stacks towards the next Raging mode. So the Chaos Ogre prepares for one last attack. And unfortunately for most of the team, he restored his barrier. So we have 19 stacks of barrier, and we don't have the AF gauge to chew through them like we just did. What we do have is the Stellar Burst. So Rising Beat, remember, it will activate the strongest learned unique skill, it will grant Barrier Pierce, and then attack again.
Time to get serious.
So there's the attack again, that barrier pierced, and the boss is defeated. So that is an example of Oboro's Rising Beat being used. By using it as well, he just extended the Thunder Zone another 3 turns, which would give that team plenty of time to raise up the AF gauge and the Stellar Burst gauge in order to continue to keep it awakened. So that's kind of how Thunder Zones work. They hit hard and hit fast. As you saw, Oboro's Stellar ability, Rising Beat, thanks to the barrier piercing and attack again, allowed me to destroy the boss on the second turn. As for the rest of it, yeah, he was hitting harder, but when you hit HP caps and stuff like that, or, if a boss has additional lives, it doesn't matter if you do, like 1 billion or 2 billion damage, a cap is a cap. And the whole consuming sparks and increasing Raging mode, normally you have to wait until the start of a turn to increase Raging mode. As you saw during the first AF gauge, I was able to raise the Raging mode one time during that. I didn't have to wait until the next turn. So his stellar skills allow him to get stronger quicker, and allow him to barrier pierce, and allow his entire team to do additional damage on the following turn, and allows him to keep the Thunder Zone going. Right now, as of July 2024, there's only 3 characters in the game that can keep an awakened Thunder Zone continuously going for an infinite amount of time. One is the newest character, Palatka, and I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, Dragon Daddy. He can do it with his Stellar Burst. Gunts can do it simply by being Gunts. When you use his charge skill and Valette's in the front line, he deploys an awakened Thundering stance. And then, of course, Melissa can do it for all elements, all types. But Melissa is not a Thunder character, so having her in the lineup would be a little bit clunky. So right now, there's only two primary ways to redeploy a Thunder Zone if it runs out. So the goal is to not let it run out, and Oboro's stellar ability also helps with that. So unless a boss breaks an Awakened Thunder Zone and stops it completely, Oboro and his stellar skill tree is able to keep it going fairly easily. 3 turns is a lot of time to build up another stellar burst bar, especially given how much damage they do and how quickly they do it. So, bottom line, Oboro, stellar awakening, yes or no? He's helpful. He's stronger with it. Is it absolutely vital? Probably not. If you have a Thunder team, if you have Villette, and if you have Alma AS, it might be worth it to go ahead and Stellar Awaken him and start playing with the Thunder team. A lot of enemies are not necessarily weak to Thunder, and there's a lot of characters that can naturally barrier pierce or grant barrier piercing, so those sides of his stellar skill, there's not much that he does that other characters in other elements can't do. However, if you don't have those other characters, or if you have a lot of really strong Thunder characters, it's probably worth it. So again, it's one of those judgment calls. So that's my opinions on Oboro. Suzette's Stellar Awakening is Bolt of Bahamut. It preemptively deploys a Wind King stance, and if you use it in Stellar Burst, it deploys an Awakened or Enhanced Wind King stance. It does a piercing attack on all enemies. It ignores target defenses, and critical damage is increased a lot. And if you have Ancient Despairs, which are stacked on main and reserve party members, it increases its strength. You can kind of see the general description here. The Ancient Despair it's referring to another Stellar Awakened ability is at the battle start, it stacks Ancient Despairs on all party members, and you inflict pain and poison on all enemies, and that lasts for 3 turns. If you only have to level 1, it's only for 1 turn. Either way, you basically stack Ancient Despairs on all party members. The others are your standard. As long as you strike a weak point, you gain light points. And when you activate the Stellar Burst, and light is the larger of the two, piercing resistance on all enemies is reduced until the end of the turn. So let's see this in action. To me, the main benefits of Bolt of Bahamut are that she can redeploy an Awakened Wind Zone, which characters like Sesta are thrilled about. So the Warped SD-148 is a super boss that can break zones, so it's kind of important to be able to put them back when you want. It also has knockbacks and so forth. You will notice that Ancient Despair is on pretty much all characters. It shows up as Ancient Despair for Suzette, but it's on all the characters right now. Which, if you don't remove it, characters like Soira like a critical rate of 100% because right there is their critical guard skill. Of course, once it's used up, then they don't have 100% critical guard. Regardless. So we start off in Wind Zone, so we'll do the usual Twin Blade Wolf. Suzette will Demonic Thrust to reduce power for 5 turns. I can Faith, I can Athdalkis, I can do kind of whatever I want. I'm just going to go ahead and Faith. We'll do Sesta. And we'll build up defenses.
Listen. These are the cries of the voiceless.
We are going to now Dragon Assault, Athdaucus, and she's low on mana, so we'll just Noblesse Oblige for now.
Blessings upon you.
These are the cries of the voiceless.
Now the boss has broken the zone. Because we're no longer in an Awakened Wind Zone, we also can no longer Twin Blade Wolf. So we need to get that Stellar Burst gauge going so we can cast Bolt of Bahamut during the Stellar Burst. So we're going to go ahead and blow the AF gauge. We'll just attack, Crusher Blow, Dragon Assault. We'll do one Binoct and then An Aurora and Floor Breeze. Once the Stellar Burst skill is ready, we're going to use it. Because we're using it in a Stellar Burst, it's going to destroy that Earth Zone and put an Awakened Wind Zone back in. It also will Barrier Pierce, so you will see the boss taking damage at this point.
Oh, ye dead. Bring forth your infernal darkness.
And she does a pretty significant amount of damage as well. The nice thing about Bolt of Bahamut, she can do that basically an infinite number of times as long as you can fill back up the burst gauge. So you have with Suzette someone that can have an Awakened Wind Zone constantly during the fight.
These are the cries of the
And if she's strong enough, she could have barrier pierced the boss to death in the burst. She came pretty close.
Sister did good.
So that's Suzette and her stellar skill, Bolt of Bahamut. So the question is, how important is it? If you need an Awakened Wind Zone somewhat on demand, then it is pretty important. Like if you have Sesta, for example, she needs an Awakened Wind Zone. In most current skills, you can awaken the zone once and then it won't do it again. So Bolt of Bahamut allows you to have Awakened Wind Zone forever. The catch, of course, is that you have to build back up that Stellar Burst gauge in order to redeploy it. And then you have to hope that the boss doesn't destroy the wind zone on the very next turn, because then you have to spend time building up the gauge again. The barrier piercing is definitely very nice to have. If she was a little bit better geared, she probably could have defeated that boss on her own. If you have characters like Melody AS who already deploy Awakened Wind Zones all the time, then Bolt of Bahamut might not be as important to you. So it's kind of a judgment call. It's definitely not a bad one to have, and her Stellar Awakening can be pretty much bought through Nopal's Emporium. So it's not like you have to use up the allcosmos starcharts, the very valuable ones. You could just save up gems and Stellar Awaken her. So if you use Suzette a lot, or if you use a wind team a lot, if you don't have Melody AS, then I would rank this one very highly. If you do have Melody AS, this one's nice to have, but not vital. So that's kind of how I feel about Suzette and her SA, based on my experience. Thillelillie ES is a Stellar Awakened character. She's a pretty strong one at that. Her stellar skill, first of all, is Sword and Heart. By default, it's a crystal type slash attack, that it has an extremely high multiplier, and it barrier pierces. It requires sword wielding savior mode to use, which is another of the Stellar Awakened abilities. Once you use it, you stop being in sword-wielding savior mode. If you use it in a stellar burst, all shadow allies will become crystal until the end of the turn if you're not already in a crystal team, and if you have any sidekick, it restores 5 charges to the sidekick bar, which is important to get back into sword-wielding savior mode. Her other abilities, as long as you have 3 or more shadow allies, every time she goes, shadow power is stored. And when she activates Stellar Burst and shadow power is greater, another zone is extended for 3 more turns. So she can keep a crystal zone, or any zone really, up indefinitely as long as you Stellar Burst pretty much every 3 turns. So let's take a look at Sword and Heart in action. Here's her gear. Pretty much endgame type gear for the current time. And she is part of my crystal team. And we're going to go fight the mysterious Chaos Ogre Hard, who has barriers. The initial damage and healing and everything is just part of the mechanics. The damage is a curse. And of course it would heal right before the curse does damage. Alright, so here's the start of the fight. For the first 3 turns, she is in sword-wielding savior mode. So we are going to spend the first turn buffing up. So we are going to increase her number of hits with Promised Land. We are going to Nephrite boost. We are going to Healing Lore. Actually, why don't we... yeah, we'll just do Healing Lore. And we're going to get Refraction Bullet and Rage going.
Need a win. Not bad.
Alma does a lot of counterattacks. We're going to have to wait. And this is not part of her stellar ability. This is just Alma AS being Alma AS. Alright, turn 2. We're going to blow the AF gauge. We're going to cast Photon Messiah, Hornet Hail, Hakam Chets, and Luster Glare. Pretty much all of my first skills over and over and over again until we can burst. And then we'll talk about Sword and Heart and the Stellar Burst. Probably won't be too long, we're pretty close. Alright. So, the boss has a barrier, looks like 1 single stack left. But Sword and Heart, we are in the Stellar Burst, which means all allies who are Shadow will become Crystal. Well, they're already Crystal already, so no big deal there. If the sidekick is active, it restores 5 charges. Well, we have Tetra active, so it's going to restore 5 charges to the sidekick bar. And the attack itself is going to be Massive and Barrier Pierce. So we're going to Sword and Heart, and to avoid the issue of, seeing other people's damage, we are going to, we'll Glint Gale. Actually, we already Glint Galed. We'll just Lunatic with her, and we'll just Lunatic with her, just so we don't mess up anything. Alright, so Sword and Heart is going to be the only attack you see, and you'll see that the boss has a barrier. You'll see that so far this AF gauge has not done any damage whatsoever.
Irregular performance increase detected.
Here's Sword and Heart, barrier piercing, and has brought the boss down to its HP stopper. And we're just wasting time till the AF gauge is done. Because we cast Sword and Heart, we also have an extended Awakened Crystal Zone. Now, a lot of super bosses immediately put back up a barrier once you hit, like an HP stopper or something. And that's exactly what this boss did. And he has a move where he will kill my team if I don't destroy him first. However, we can't do Sword and Heart anymore because we are not in sword-wielding savior mode. However, that sidekick bar, we gained 5 charges because we used it in a Stellar Burst. Moke only requires 5 charges. So Moke's going to go on a rampage. You can switch back to your sidekick of choice. But when Moke goes, she is back in sword-wielding savior state, which means she can use Sword and Heart again, which means she can barrier pierce 2 times in a row. So if we cast Sword and Heart right now, she won't care about this barrier. It doesn't really matter what the others do. The boss is dead. So that's a showcase of Thillelillie and her stellar awakened skill Sword and Heart. So Sword and Heart, extremely powerful, barrier piercing, attacks all enemies. So if there's like a boss that has like 2 arms or something like that, it's affecting everything. And it restores the sidekick gauge. Sword wielding savior mode boosts her strength and all by 100 points. So those 2 alone make her extremely powerful. Have her with a strong crystal team, or technically even a strong slash team, and she will really do well. So overall, Thillelillie, I don't want to say that her SA is absolutely required, because her Photon Messiah skill, which is just a normal skill, it inflicts pain, it attacks all enemies, it's very, very strong, it improves crystal type attacks, and so forth. Between it and Promised Land, which improves skill hit count by 1, that means Photon Messiah is doing 3 attacks on all enemies, and they're pretty strong attacks, even without sword wielding savior mode. So she can function without her SA skill. She can't barrier pierce, she can't extend the zone, there's a lot of downsides, but she can work. So if you don't have her SA'd, it's not an absolute requirement for her to function. That said, as you can see, that Sword and Heart skill is extremely helpful for all sorts of reasons. So she's one of those characters that if you have her and she's part of one of your teams, like if you have a crystal team or a slash team, something like that, she's probably worth SAing. I would. I did, in fact. That's how I got her. So she's one that it's not an absolute requirement, but whatever the very next level is, I would say highly, 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 highly preferable to SA. I'd say go ahead and do it. You will enjoy having that skill. So that's the Thillelillie ES. Xianhua. Is her SA necessary or not? So Xianhua herself is a very powerful character. Her stellar skill is Tesseract, which is a magic attack, and damage increases based on how low the target's health is. If you Stellar Burst and use Tesseract, then certain buffs become inverted. So if an enemy has like a power buff or an int buff, that's a large power buff, let's say, it might be inverted and then becomes a large power debuff. It also inflicts exposed magic, which means you basically have weakness to magic. So like all weaknesses, you do a lot more damage on something that has a weakness to magic, and that lasts until the end of the turn. So it's really good to use in a full magic team. Other stellar abilities and so forth. At battle start, all staff allies gain magic damage based on MP, and staff equipped characters improve their damage by 50% for 3 turns. So basically for the first 3 turns of battle, if you have Xianhua in the front line, you and your team will do a lot more damage. If you have KMS allies, your shadow power builds up, and when you activate the Stellar Burst and shadow power is higher, then everyone gets an extra 30% to their magic critical damage until the end of the turn. The other benefits, of course, Xianhua heavily relies on having a high amount of mana and a high amount of intellect. So any nodes that give mana or stats or intellect are good to have. And of course, leveling from 80 to 100, you naturally gain a little more mana and a little more HP each turn, and base stats. The past couple levels, mine's at 87. She's been gaining about 10-ish points, 11-ish points of mana per level. So if that holds true for the remainder of the levels, you're looking at gaining about 200 total mana from 80 to 100. And the magic number is 1087. If you can get to 1087, then her Mind's Eye ability has capped out on damage increases. So through buffs or just naturally, you want her mana to be high. There are plenty of buffs, like I've gotten her to like 1500 mana. So anyway, so Xianhua on paper looks kind of interesting, but my personal opinion, I don't believe you really need the Stellar Awakening. I think she functions perfectly fine just as a regular 5-star. And you're going to see 2 fights on her, one showcasing the inversion and one showcasing the exposed magic. And you'll notice during all of those fights, keep an eye out every time she uses Horizon how much damage that's doing. To showcase Tesseract, we are going to fight the Worm King's Shadow. So here on the first turn, we're going to get set up. We're going to do Charity Blend, Trinity, Pain, and debuff the boss. So this will give us a weakened boss and an awakened magic zone to play with. Turn 2, we're going to blow the AF gauge and try to get the Stellar Burst bar going. So during turn 2, we're going to pray, start casting Horizon, Nocturnal, and her motor for the buffs, and then pretty much all ones. So 2, 1, 2, 2, and then all ones. You'll see that Horizon's doing a nice amount of damage all by itself. And one more Horizon should knock the boss off. So there's the first life. There was 0 damage from the prayer, in case you're wondering. Now here on turn 3, it's the last chance that we have for Flammopolis to do any of her extra abilities. It's all first 3 turns of battle type stuff, so we are going to debuff the boss again. He cleared his buffs. We are going to Horizon. And let's see, our prayer's still going. So we can go ahead and Tampered Roast and restore health to everyone and mana. Okay, there go 2 revives. We have 1 blood contract left on Mayunfa. Okay, we are no longer in an awakened magic zone, so we are going to magic zone, Horizon. Actually, we'll go ahead and start praying first. We will Nocturnal Procession, and she will attack. And Horizon knocked the boss down to the next HP stopper. Technically next life, I guess. The boss has 1 life left. We have an AF gauge again. We are praying, so we can use Charity Blend to deploy Magic Fate Stance, and then Trinity to awaken it. Actually, I think we already awakened it once. So it'll just be to improve her hits, yeah. Alright, we are going to Rosaliliac again and attack. And then we'll just spam Horizons. So we're going to do 3, 2, 3, and then 1s. 3, 2, 3, and then all 1s. And we've hit the next and final life. Another end breath. Still have our prayer going. Mayunfa has a hold ground, that's why she has 1 health. That means we don't have prayer going anymore. The boss is counting down. Never a good sign. So, here on the final turn, the boss is pretty severely buffed. Physical resistance, magic resistance, and so forth. Now is a good time to use Tesseract. Tesseract, in Stellar Burst, certain buffs become debuffs, and we get exposed magic on all enemies until the end of the turn. So here we go, Tesseract. Magic attack, and certain buffs become debuffs.
Enlightenment is the key to unwavering truth.
Now if we check him out, we have the exposed magic attack. We are going to we'll go ahead and let's see, how's our spoiling? Doing pretty good. We're praying, so we'll Tampered Roast to awaken the zone. Horizon. Rosaliliac to reduce a little bit of power, and attack. And because of the exposed magic until the end of turn, she just sliced right through the boss's remaining health. So that's how the exposed magic part of Tesseract can be extremely beneficial. So in the previous fight, you saw the Stellar Awakened Tesseract, and you saw the inflict exposed magic on all enemies until turn end. She wasn't completely killing the Worm King's shadow in 1 hit each turn without blowing the AF gauge, but once exposed magic was on, she was able to basically one-shot his entire health bar. What you did not see is the other half of it. Certain buffs are inverted, becoming debuff effects. So what does that mean? So to showcase this one, we are going to fight a true manifest. We are going to bring out Ewan.
It's fine. I'm going to be fine. Really?
So here on turn 1, we're going to deploy Magic Stance. We are going to Trinity, Pain, and debuff Ewan.
Let's dance!
Now, Ewan has a stacking power buff. You'll see power increased, medium, stack 1 out of 5. Every time he does that 1 blunt attack, it keeps stacking up. So he's making himself more and more powerful. So we're going to go ahead and blow the AF gauge and Actually, we will hold off on the AF gauge for one more turn. We're going to get Praying going, Horizon, which should bring him down to his first HP stopper, Nocturnal, and buff staff characters. There we go. There's his HP stopper.
I'll beat anyone who gets in our way.
Now we're going to blow the AF gauge and get that Stellar Burst ready to go. So during the AF gauge, this is turn number 3. We'll work in one more Hermodal Galder just to maximize for 5 turns the buff, though we're going to kill him in 2 turns. We're going to go ahead and Icrophilia, Horizon, and we'll cast a Please as well. So you can see he's already at nothing. So we're just spamming at this point, and now we have our Stellar Burst skill ready to go. If you want to do any buffs, anything like that, now's the time to do it. He's going to fill up on health, attack one more person. And we have Roaring Bash Dance. Alright. So now is when we're going to showcase Tesseract's ability to invert certain buffs. So right now, there's a bunch of debuffs on him, and there's this one power buff. So we are going to cast Tesseract.
Enlightenment is the key to unwavering truth.
He takes some damage, and then he'll take more damage if he was actually hurt. But if I check his statuses now, that power that was increasing is now decreasing by a medium amount. And if he had like 3 or 4 stacks, then there'd be like 4 stacks of that power decreasing by that amount. So now he has absolutely no buffs whatsoever. It's not a swap. It doesn't swap and make the debuffs into buffs and the buffs into debuffs. So any debuffs that you already have, like these from Hermodal Galder and these from Rosa Liliac, they're still there. So the only thing it affects is the buffs, and it lasts for 4 turns. So enough time to build up the Stellar Burst gauge and doing it again. So now if he attacks my team, he will do even less damage than before. So let's see, we need Magic Zone, we need Horizon, we'll rebuff Rosa Liliac, and we will attack. Not that it will matter, Horizon will utterly destroy him, because he also has Expose Weakness. And there you go. So if he had had time to attack, he would have done very little damage to my team. And so think of some of the super bosses that have some of those stacking power int buffs, things like that. If you choose to Tesseract at a certain time, then they suddenly become debuffs. Now it does say it doesn't work on every single buff. It says certain buffs are inverted. So there will be times probably where Tesseract will not help. As you saw in this video and the Worm King Shadow video, was Tesseract really necessary? Not really. It was kind of nice to invert buffs, but I actually, making this video, I went and tried like 6 or 7 different super bosses looking for a good one to showcase that part of it, and they all kept dying too quickly because Horizon is just that powerful. I did the Karakuri Heart of Ro, I inverted him, and then the damage from Tesseract killed him. I mean, and there were others like that too. So Tesseract, it's nice, but as you can tell from the way the fights all went, Horizon is her bread and butter. It attacks twice, it ignores defenses, it treats defenses like 0, and it uses the team's intellect, her intellect, and so forth to really boost its damage. And if the target enemy has more than half its health, then it will attack a second time. And if you use Trinity, It increases skill hits by 1 for 3 turns, which means instead of 2 devastating, no defense magic attacks, it will do 3. And you have Horizon and you have Trinity already just because she's a level 80 character. And then if you don't have Tesseract, you can use Link. And Link is one of those skills that Unlimited allows you to awaken a magic zone. So when magic zone runs out, Mayunfa can cast, it again, and then I can cast Link and awaken it again, and then keep doing massive amounts of damage. So I feel that Link is a very, very important skill to have. I mean, there's a bunch of other skills that Xianhua has that I think are useful, and Tesseract, her Stellar Awaken skill, it's occasionally nice, but as I said, I went through 7 different bosses just trying to find a way to showcase Tesseract really well. And I still couldn't show you Ewan's damage because he died immediately afterwards, so I couldn't show you how much it was reduced, because he was hitting for 3,000, 4,000 on the characters. And so he was going to do less, but he got knocked out. So, bottom line, Xianhua, she doesn't need her stellar skill to be functional. In fact, it kind of takes up an extra slot on her already limited skill set, unless you have 80 Shadow, which I have 30 to go. So Xianhua is one of those characters, if you get her, you don't need her Stellar Awakening. If you do get her Stellar Awakened, honestly, the MP nodes, extra stats for intellect and so forth, are probably a little more helpful overall than the Tesseract skill, because her damage is based on having a high amount of MP, and of course the extra health is great for survival, and all those extra stats are contributing to her intellect and giving her a very high magic attack, which Horizon, the higher that magic attack is, the better. So Xianhua, nice to have, not as nice as others, definitely not a vital thing. So if you don't want to SA her, I don't think you're missing out on too much. If anything, you're probably missing out more on the extra MP than anything else. So that's my personal opinion on Xianhua. Everyone has their own opinion, but Stellar Awakening, You've now seen all 5 characters and heard me talk a little about their Stellar Awakening board and skills. Of these 5, I believe Suzette and Thillelillie ES are the 2 most important to Stellar Awaken. Thillelillie's Sword and Heart is just absolutely bonkers. I've done over 8 billion in damage with that skill alone, and it's barrier piercing. What's not to love? And Suzette, if you don't have Melody AS and you need an Awaken Zone for Sesta, Suzette is probably the next best character because she can infinitely awaken the zone with Bolt of Bahamut. She sets Pain Poison, and she does pretty decent damage on her own as well. So I would probably prioritize these 2 if you use them. Of the remaining, Xianhua and Alma really don't need their Stellar Awakening. The fact that I had to search around for 7 bosses just to find a way to showcase Xianhua, because she kept killing them with Horizon, tells me that Tesseract is And Alma, the main reason I Stellar Awakened her, because I pulled her on her banner, so I got her instantly Stellar Awakened, but the extra health, mana, defenses that you get from the stellar tree and leveling to 100 are almost more beneficial than her stellar skill. So if you have Xianhua and Alma, you can leave them at 80 and not awaken them. Don't waste the allcosmos star charts, again, in my opinion. And then Oboro is kind of in between. If you have a Thunder team, if you have Valette, if you are developing one, his Stellar Awakening definitely helps that team flourish. If you don't have any Thunder characters at all, aside from the free ones like Kamlanaj, and you pull Oboro, there's really no real reason to Stellar Awaken him because he doesn't really lend much to non-Thunder teams. So in this group of 5, Thillelillie and Suzette would be on top, Xianhua and Alma, nah, and Oboro is dependent on what other characters you have. Again, all my opinions, everyone's opinions are different, but I hope this helps you in deciding to whether or not you should spend the all-cosmos star charts or whether you should pursue people's stellar awakenings. So, Casual Crono, signing out.